Another episode of the South Texas Power Lunch. I'm Matt Duke, managing attorney with the South Texas Business Lawyers. And today's episode, it's Fiesta Day here. We're recording this a little bit just because of the fact that we've got traffic and the city of San Antonio is shutting down for the big party here today and into the weekend. But we're streaming here from Geekdom again, and we're going to have two exciting upcoming startups and founders here to talk about their innovations, their journey, and the lessons they are learning, because we want to give a platform to these exciting companies that are out here. Today, we've got two. We've got Dave Esra from BobiHealth that's going to be here to talk with us. And we have Joan Stanolis from Critical Fault. Again, two great companies. They've been in the news recently. We're really, really excited to have them come on our podcast here as we get to talk about exciting things that are going on here in San Antonio and South Texas that you may not know about here. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right in. We're going to bring Dave in here. Dave, are you there?
I'm here. Hey, Matt.
There's Dave. All right. Awesome. And we always are doing this stuff with technology and remote and everything. Dave, thanks so much for coming on here to the podcast to talk about BobiHealth. And, we're just going to jump right into it. Tell us about you and your journey that led you to BobiHealth. What is your founder's story?
Okay. Well, I guess it all starts about 13 and a half years ago when we found out that Sarah was pregnant with Cooper.
Okay.
So Sarah had a complicated pregnancy, right? She had a high risk, very complicated, and it was incredibly stressful for us. And I just can't imagine how stressful it was for her. And fortunately for us, we had great medical care. We were both in the military, and Sarah and Cooper both ended up okay and are healthy today. Fast forward a bit, I spent about 2.5 years helping stand up a company that was studying the effect of COVID and COVID vaccines on pregnancy. So we did pharmacovigilance studies for big pharma companies. It was there that I started to really learn the gap in care for women in general,
right?
And especially in pregnancies, because there's so many ethical guidelines around doing studies for pregnancy. So I felt like we needed to do more to protect this vulnerable community. And it was in some post-grad courses at MIT and UT Austin on artificial intelligence that I was challenged with solving a problem with AI. And this was the clear choice for me. And when I presented my idea to the cohort at the end of the course, the professors were basically like, "Oh, you really need to do this, Dave. This is a good idea. This can help a lot of people." So we launched Bobi last May. We started the company, and we got our intellectual property set and started the build in June, and have since launched the BobiHealth app in both India and the US on the Apple platform. So it is live now.
So tell us what BobiHealth does. You've hinted a little bit at the problem that it solves, but what is the solution that is BobiHealth?
Right. So we created a digital platform that can collect a tremendous amount of data, holistic data, rich data sets that can then predict adverse events. So for example, we can already predict live birth with over 90% accuracy. It's very, very, very powerful. Now, we're not deploying that, but we've proved that these models work. So as we collect data from wearables, biometrics, day to day, we're checking in with mom, how are you feeling today? Happy face to sad face, right? And if it's sad face, we're asking, what are your symptoms? So we collect those symptoms, and then the following day, we're asking, okay, what was the outcome? Did you see your provider? What was the outcome? And as we collect this rich data set, we can predict adverse events like preeclampsia, infection, mental health issues, and provide timely information to then allow users to make decisions for healthier outcomes, right? Less severe adverse events, have more meaningful conversations with providers, right? So just know what to do, or maybe it's just peace of mind. Like I know what's going on. Boop 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 on the app, and oh, okay, this is normal. Oh, great. So that's how it
So
works.
from an app standpoint, so it's predictive, not really predictive medicine. It's really just I guess a guide, but what is it that you hope for Bobby to accomplish? Is it for providers, physicians, hospitals, groups to be able to manage patients better by grabbing that data and having a better communication platform? Or is it really for us as well? I'm not a woman, so for women to take control of being able to manage it for themselves somewhat with better information. What is y'all's goal?
Right. So yes for both,
Great.
but we're building for the pregnant person.
Right.
There are a large number of people in communities that don't have access to care. They don't
Yeah.
have providers. One of the physicians on our staff is a ER doc, and he sees patients every day that have not seen a provider throughout the entire term of the pregnancy.
Wow.
Right. So we're trying to close that health equity gap
Right.
by providing information, right? And so, maybe that pregnant person just doesn't know, right? These things could mean something severe, like my
Hmm.
life might end. I need to go see a doctor, right? And maybe, think about, a woman who lives in rural Texas who's 2 hours from any medical care or maternal health care facility. They have to make very tough decisions. So, yes, we're empowering the pregnant person with information, customized information based off their data, and they can then provide access to that to their physician if they have a physician, or to their their caregiver. Maybe it's their husband or parents or whatever. Those folks can have access. So I think about, as a military service member, how powerful this would be for me to be deployed to Afghanistan and be
Right.
able to monitor my wife's pregnancy health real
Right.
time.
Right.
Like, how that level of comfort, like, that would mean a lot to me.
No, this is great. So, when you talk about the data points, is it where they have to have a wearable, or is it just integrate with the wearables they have? How do you collect the data points for it?
Great question. Yeah, optimally, there's a wearable. We're monitoring biometrics, near real time.
Okay.
But we understand that not everybody has that. We do understand that most everybody has a smartphone.
Right.
So we're building. It's still very valuable, useful if you have a smartphone, even if you don't have access to Wi-Fi regularly. That's okay. So we're trying to build to that, most underserved community, or it's not required, but yes, it's great. We're looking at opportunities to be able to partner with nonprofits or communities to provide wearables. This is a very cheap solution where a preeclampsia or premature birth costs tens of thousands of dollars, that the community itself, right, the medical facility or the insurance provider, they have to eat that cost. So
Oh, that's right. People don't realize that hospitals, when it comes to delivering babies, lose money
yep,
on delivering babies. They make money off of premature babies or complications to birth. I'm not saying please don't listen to me and say, "Oh, it's the hot." No, no, no. They don't want it. It's just the reality of healthcare is there's a certain percentage of babies and pregnancies that will be complicated, and those are the ones that cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, that government
hmm
subsidy. And when the government subsidizes that, the health insurances have to come in. We subsidize those,
Matt, it's
because how do they get the money? We
yeah,
pay those. We pay those through our taxes. We pay those through increased premiums. So it is a major issue there that
yep,
people don't realize. It's invisible to those that don't experience. It's extremely powerful to those that do have to experience those.
yep. About $60 billion a year to medical facilities and insurance providers, and about $9 billion to employers
Right.
from productivity costs.
Right. Oh, that's true. I mean, not even putting in the productivity costs. And again, for those that watch, and again, I'm in the healthcare industry and former, executive in the healthcare system. It's not the healthcare systems that's there. The reality is that medicine has progressed so well that you can be amazed at the life-saving technologies used in those NICUs that 20 years ago would have been death sentences for these
Yeah.
poor babies. These children are able to live and thrive because of those technologies. But the reality is, many of these are able to be overcome and not overcome, but avoided
Yeah.
by just that. And to your point earlier, which we'll get to the Methodist Ministries accelerator that we're a part of. The reality is, in rural South Texas, people have to add in an added factor for healthcare decisions that we in San Antonio really don't understand.
Yeah.
And that is to get good healthcare. They can get adequate healthcare in many circumstances, but even that could be an hour to 2 hour drive. But to get good, effective healthcare is sometimes 2, 3, 4 hour drive.
Yeah.
And that's one way. So there's the how do I get there without a vehicle or access or getting somebody to drive me. They are usually living, at or below the poverty line. So then that's another factor too that's on there. And so there's a lot of complications for access to healthcare in our community of South Texas that is people don't really appreciate in the rest of the country, especially if you're living in an urban environment.
Can I make a quick plug for one of our great partners,
Absolutely.
the Ronald McDonald Charities House, or House Charities here in San Antonio are fantastic, a great facility. And so if you have need of care and you're one of those rural folks, like there's organizations like that can help you. You can stay there for free. They feed you. It's a really great facility. So.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of community partners. We're partnered with Methodist Healthcare Ministries in what they're doing with regard to innovation for their accelerator and their education program. So we go to the Valley and do those sort of things. And again, there's a lot of great effort into finding innovations and growing them. And then there's also a massive, community network here in San Antonio and in South Texas of support services. That is out there as well. Let's come back to Bobi and just on its journey there from you've been up for a year. How has it been on the fundraising standpoint? Where are you guys in your fundraising journey for Bobi?
Well, yeah, fortunately for us, my wife and I were able to bootstrap up to this point. So we put a lot of our savings into it and just feel driven, mission driven to do what we're doing. We are looking for a seed round in the next weeks, really, next couple of months. We'll need to run a seed round to build on the Android platform and launch a marketing campaign to get the user base that we need. So that's coming. We just want to make sure that we have the metrics established to show investors that we're a safe bet.
That's right. I mean, when you start to bring in third party investors into your company, you need a lot of validation, and so those metrics to show that the solution can be validated, that it is what you intended to be, or if there's gaps, can you identify those? And then the use of funds, what is it going to be? It's interesting as you go into this, and maybe you've got some experience. The bootstrapper always looks at it, not always, many times looks at it like, hey, don't you know how much money we've already poured into this? The new investor coming in goes, well, that's not really mine. I'm just looking at my money and what I put in for the future. And so it creates an interesting dynamic. On your front of talking with investors, what's been one of the biggest lessons or ahas for you in talking with third parties for investing in the company?
Well, I thought that we would have just folks chomping at the bit to get a piece of us, right? This is such a great idea, and it's going to be such a wonderful thing for the world. It's going to a huge reach, right? Data is the next .com boom, right? And so we will, and we're starting with maternal health, but there's more coming. So we will be a data company. We are ethical AI company. But I was shocked to find out that, the interest rates are up and the economy's shifted, and now it's not a great time to have a startup and be looking for funding. So,
right.
that was a bit of a shock to me. And I also, in health tech, these solutions take sometimes years to build, right? And we are building fast. We have a working prototype now, where our MVP is out on the market, but investors are like, well, there's no revenue. You're too early. Well, in the health tech, so you don't get to revenue right away. It takes time and some patience. So I think that finding the health tech savvy investor has been a bit of a challenge for me in San Antonio.
Oh yeah. I mean, the lesson for almost all founders they figure out is matching the right investor with your company. And the matching isn't necessarily do they have money, which I mean, hey, I've done that personally. I'm like, well, they got money. It's, number one, do they understand your company?
Mm-hmm.
And when it's understanding, it's not just your problem and your solution in that story, but it's also of the journey that you're on. Because, you're right. You're a health tech company. Back in the .com, everybody was pouring in money with no revenue at all, and people are still raising
Just an idea.
hundreds of millions of dollars for an idea, right? But then everybody gets burned. So then that shifts back to, well, you only invest in things that have revenue, which is, more of your free cash flow type investor that's like, I'm going to, invest in real estate or those sort of things. Completely different in venture-backed companies, particularly in technology. So it's difficult to find, especially in San Antonio, those that understand and have the risk tolerance for a venture-backed company. Yeah. The good news, though, is for you, Dave, is I have seen it. It's a long tail to try to get it going. And once you get some momentum, usually when you start to get to the first couple of investors that do match, they know all the other ones that match as well.
Right.
And so then it goes, people think, wow, they raise money really, really fast. And you don't realize they've been trying to raise money for a year and a half. They finally got to the right point with the right group. And then, yes, it just took off. So it does take some time.
Yeah. We're not just looking for money. Right, we're looking for We're looking for a partner.
Good.
Somebody who can be our champion, who believes in our mission and what we're trying to do. And we feel like if we can find that investor that can partner with us like that, they'll be a champion for us and will help us get to where we need to go.
That's great. That's great. Well, Dave, let me put you into the virtual green room here for a second. I'm going to bring in Joan, talk with her, and then we'll be back in a couple of minutes. And we'll all talk together about our trials and tribulations and victories. Okay?
All right. Sounds good.
All right. We'll see you in a couple of minutes. All right. Now we're going to bring in Joan from Critical Fault. Joan, how are you?
I'm doing great. I hope that you are too.
We are doing absolutely fantastic in here. Fiesta is on its way, so it's just a matter of moments, I'm sure, for everybody here. Let's talk about Critical Fault and the cyber tech. Give us the journey for you on how you even came up to Critical Fault along with Chris.
So we also have a third co-founder. His name is Jordan. I was going to say, but so it's a kind of interesting story. Most people who get into cybersecurity are either from like the armed forces, or in our case, we're just a bunch of nerds. And I actually used to be in education. So most people who get into cybersecurity are like my CTO, Chris's story. He got a computer when he was 13. He broke it. He fixed it. He broke it a completely new way, been in love with computers his whole life.
There you go.
I got dragged into cybersecurity kicking and screaming because all my friends are technology nerds. And I want to specify that when I say nerds, that's a good thing.
It's a term of, that's right. It is a admirable trait to be a nerd. I'm a partial nerd. I wish I was cool enough to be a full nerd.
Well, everybody can be. I was going to say, you just have to be continuously educating yourself. And so we had the opportunity because of a Dogecoin story. Our third co-founder, Jordan, in 2014, I think, bought like $250 worth of Dogecoin. Kind of as a funny story, Dogecoin had only been around for, I think, like a couple of months or a year or so. Like it was fractions of a cent for each Dogecoin. And then the pandemic happened. We're fast forwarding through time. We're sitting in a cabin in the middle of the woods, like just chilling with some people. And he mentions that fact. And Chris and I just, what? Dogecoin is 6 cents right now. And so by the time we got around to, so he then told us that in 2017-ish, he had gotten ransomware on it, but he had built a whole new like computer system and was like using that instead. Jordan is our physical security expert and our social engineering and weird deep dive research guy. Chris is our main like ethical hacker sort of a human. And we basically were just like, what does Chris do? Give him your ransomware filled laptop. And by the time we were all dealing with a bunch of stuff, the pandemic didn't make anybody's lives easier. And so by the time we got his laptop in our hands, it was April and Dogecoin was about 39 cents for each.
Wow. I remember that. Dogecoin was the one that was the dog, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that.
And like I said, totally bought as a joke. He thought it was like throwing money into the wind, no big deal. And so after Chris was able to take digital forensic images of it, and we were able to, like, I dare everybody to try to remember a password that they created like 12 years ago perfectly. So we had to do some password cracking, and 8 million guesses later in 2 weeks, and a rental of some high processing virtual machines. We got Jordan his money back, and it was in the sum of like $300,000.
Wow.
And at that point, he just said, you and Chris have always really talked about going out there and starting your own business. Would you like a co-founder with some capital? He's like, because obviously you know what you're doing. And so that's how on June 8th, 2021, Critical Fault was born, is through us actually utilizing our skills and our connections to actually recover cryptocurrency.
Wow. Which, I mean, it happens a lot, I hear, with the ransomware and those sort of things, with it. But wow. Yeah, that's a pretty profitable, from Dogecoin. I remember Bitcoin of something that you could do back it was the late 2000s. I want to say some people were talking about Bitcoin all the way back there. Kind of wish I would have gotten into that. I didn't. I went to law school instead. So, we all make choices.
Know. I know Chris had one Bitcoin or something like in that area, maybe like 2010 or whatever. And like, it was worth nothing at that time. Right. No one can know. No one can punish themselves. Like I said, we were just a random opportunity that probably shouldn't have happened. It was a coincidence, and it's crazy.
I don't believe in coincidences like that. Just sometimes there's a path and we don't know what it is until we get there. But tell us about Critical Fault today. So what do you guys do today? Because I love, my son and I, we've talked about what y'all do because he's interested in cybersecurity and cyber tech. But tell us what Critical Fault does today, because it has evolved, right?
Yes, absolutely. So Critical Fault has, so just as a general understanding for basic audience understanding, cybersecurity is a huge umbrella term that covers a lot of security. And there are two sides to it. There's black hats, which are all the people who are doing illegal things and they don't have permission to do what they're doing. And then we have
bad guys.
Hats. Yes, bad guys. It's all like back to the Westerns from the 1940s.
Back to the Westerns, the black hats and the white hats.
They're 10-gallon hats. And we're white hats, which means we always get permission before we touch any systems or networks. We never do anything illegal. We're called ethical hackers. And then underneath the white hat territory, you have your blue team and you have your red team. Blue team are defenders. They're the people who set up your Wi-Fi. They're your IT team. They're your directors, your consultants. And then you have what we do, and we are called red teamers. We are the ones who, usually by compliance or regulatory needs, come in and we provide something called a penetration test, also called a pen test. And Our job is to basically do what the bad guys would do, but not destroy or disable your business while we do it. And then we write very nuanced, detailed reports explaining what we did, what we touched, what we could have done, where could you see that this could be duplicated, have these vulnerabilities been reported, and then we help you remediate them so that an actual bad actor will not take advantage of your organization and shut it down.
So
that was a lot.
No, I mean, I find this fascinating. I mean, I know that it's the data war, right? Which the cyber war is real. I mean, you guys are effectively the team that comes in there on the cyber war and says, "Hey, we got inside the castle, and here's how we did it. You might want to go patch, this and that from those sort of things."
And I mean, so I talk about Jordan a lot. We like to talk about how we specialize where the physical meets the digital realm. People will talk about their cybersecurity. They'll talk about their firewalls. They'll talk about their configurations. They'll talk about their settings and their policies and their practices. But they allow us to social engineer or convince people and trust us to come in their front door. Right. And so we specialize in physical penetration tests. So like seeing if we can actually get in your physical perimeter, internal, where we pretend to be kind of like a bad employee, I guess. And then external, as if we were like a black box, North Korea, Russian, or like Chinese bad actor just coming in to see if we can ransomware.
So when you said like physical, do y'all actually go see if you can infiltrate the building?
If we have permission from the client, yes. Wow. We've had many of
That's
them.
That's like spy movie, like, the person with the headset giving you the key card that writes it in so you can get to the server and put the USB stick in.
So while a lot of people think like Ocean's 11, which is kind of close, like you create a situation for people to trust you. There's actually, I think it's like 1980s, 1990s movie. Besides like maybe the end, I highly recommend if you want to see like actual people gaining trust and doing things, Sneakers. The movie Sneakers is social engineering. It's just a group of people who are coming together and trying to figure out how to infiltrate. Right. And that's actually very real, except for like the blind guy driving the vehicle. But, but no, we've used, a lot of times people have to badge in to get to work, and then they don't have to badge out, but they'll have like a little button that opens the door. Well, one company had a button and it was like 10 feet from the exit. So you hit it and you have time to walk to it and then you exit. We used a pool pole, like you use to clean your pool. It breaks into 1 foot sections. Yeah. And we just put it together, touched the thing, the door unlocked, and we were able to get into a secure location because we just find ways to take advantage of systems that are already in place. So we can, in fact, and do break into the physical locations of a lot of clients.
Wow. See, that's the kind of stuff that I would say, okay, I could do that. I could do those kind of things. Those would be fun. But the data stuff, it's above my head. Well, let me ask you a question. This is probably a very obvious question for many people, but a lot of people don't think about this sometimes. For a tech company, why is doing a pen test like what Critical Fault does so important to their company?
Because you never know how good your security is until you test it. And I say that meaning, so we had a $1 billion energy company that we were doing a pen test for. And they were like, so what, like, walk us through what you did. And I'm going to use a very simple example. I was like, so the first night, we show up at like 1:30 in the morning. We're very careful. We spot all the cameras. We think about what their angles are, what they can observe. Night 2, we step in front of some of the cameras. We do some weird stuff, see if security guards come out. Night 3, we just started ignoring the cameras. And then it's because they weren't manned. And when we told the CEO that, they said that they were supposed to be. Oh. And so that's just one simple thing. But like, we're in San Antonio right now. Everybody has an app, right? Yeah. And so the physical security should be checked. But additionally, like, if you don't know what people are going to do as soon as they put your application out there and people can touch it, right, they'll break it. And I don't want to, like, that's not to inspire fear, because I don't believe in fear mongering. I was an educator for 13 years and I believe in helping people educate themselves. So if you ever have questions, please contact me. As I say, but also I do presentations at Geekdom all the members on May 1st at 3 p.m. I'm doing a small practices, high impact cybersecurity for entrepreneurs and startups. Like every chance I can, I get to talk to people about why they would do it. So if you have a startup, everybody knows what sweat equity is if you have a startup. Like he was talking about how they use their savings. We've used our savings. We've all blood, sweat, and teared our business to get going. And to have somebody take it away because you didn't check to see if you had the right security configuration, to have somebody ransomware it away from you unless you pay them money you don't have because none of you have taken a salary in a year. Like and here's the thing, and I always tell people when you're part of a startup, I'm not asking that when you're poor and broke, this is when you need to get your pen test. When you go and ask for funding, put aside money for it. When they're like, why do you need this amount of money? And you're like, because no one wants to be an application that gets broken as soon as it's out. No one wants to have a HIPAA compliance penalty fee because they didn't, put security information access controls in place. Like, it's just a way for people to better protect all the hard things they've worked for.
No, that's true. And from a regulatory standpoint, especially if you're in fintech or if you're in health tech that's integrating with medical information systems, you're at a massive risk for you as the actual company, but those that you're plugging into. So the financial institutions that you plug into, the medical providers, and if you're getting into their databases, people don't realize that there's a lot of open doors and from the connectors in that are actually the targets more than they are the actual motherships, like the banks and the hospitals who are it's usually the infiltrators are trying to use their way in through an app or through some third-party provider that's connected into those systems as opposed to a direct attack. So it's critical. And in fact, many times contracts require the sort of testing that takes place and proof of those as well, just to be able to get the deal done. So it's something that is extremely important. And the more risk there is with the data you have, the more risk there is, for not complying with getting these type of testings done.
And we talk about how a lot of times people give compliance regulation a little bit of a bad rap. I know that nobody likes to have to follow rules that just seem to be there. But if companies were already doing this, it wouldn't have been made a regulation or compliance. For instance, PCI DSS is the payment card industry. Visa card, MasterCard, all of them got together in like 2021 and we're like, we're done with this fraud. So instead of waiting for the government to finally be like, guys, get it together, they said, no. You want to use our cards? You want to use our business? You want to have access to banks? You're going to have to do this. And the industry took control. And so they didn't have to wait to be told by government regulation and compliance. And so there was the possibility that all these other places could have done that.
Right.
But
no, that's true. And there's some technologies like Stripe and others that you can use their APIs to basically let that be the funnel that you come in. But still the compliance is something that's important. Here's what I see with small businesses and startups, especially in highly regulated industries. Compliance is massive. I mean, if you go look at healthcare, if you have anything to do with technology or data, it's massive. HIPAA scares you. If you're in ed tech, they've got their own acronyms, FERPA, that could come after you. If you're in banking, there's so many different acronyms from different, that comes all over the place of those, right? And so when you look at the laundry list of risk, you have to go after the high risk issues and make sure that you're resolving those. Unfortunately, there's going to be some low risk ones at the beginning that you just can't get to, but you have to get the high risk ones that check the boxes. But as you grow, and as to your point earlier, you have to get to all of it. And so knowing it to get there is huge.
And on that note, with them talking about, once again, not trying to freak people out, compliance and regulation is not like 100% overbearing if you're just starting out either. They have different levels of maturity standards. And a lot of times, if you're working on compliance, they're very forgiving. If you're like, look, I just started and I'm looking at being at maturity level 1 or 2, don't worry what those are at this moment. As I say, and you have a plan in action of how you are hitting those milestones, a lot of times that's just part of the plan of compliance. They don't expect you to come in day one and be compliant. There are some critical issues that you definitely need to do. But instead of people like hearing what I'm saying and going, well, why even bother? How am I supposed to do all this? Is that you just start and you focus on big issues, and then you just create a plan and make sure that you consistently keep it updated and just keep working on it. And it's totally doable. We've done it with many clients. Like, just have a process and don't freak out.
You know, on that note, let's bring Dave back in here since we're talking about like healthcare and data and those sort of things. There's Dave. Dave, can you hear us?
Got you. Yeah.
You know, Dave, you look almost like you're like a music producer with that setup and everything else. Like I keep waiting for the mix board and everything else of what you're doing. I can't pull off that kind of style. I wish I could. I got to wear like old cowboy boots. That's about the style I can pull off. Anyway, sorry, squirrel. So Dave, I know you've been hearing Joan and I talking through about like, you know, security and those sort of things. Talk a little bit about Bobi and what you guys are, you know, how you're thinking about regulatory compliance being in healthcare with PHI, which is, you know, personal health identity. Whoa, I just messed that one up. Your unique health information. How do you guys view that, you know, the cybersecurity threat and compliance?
Yeah, I really appreciate what y'all are talking about. Coming from a compliance background and running due diligence for you know, the pharmacovigilance studies we did globally, right? So a lot of regulations, especially around data. The EU being kind of the leader in compliance regulations for that, GDPR standards. So BobiHealth right now, we consider ourselves a wellness app, right? We're not considering ourselves a medical device or software that as a medical device, though we will take it there eventually. But right now we're trying to solve for gaps right now. So that means we're kind of skirting around. We don't have to go through FDA approval. We don't have to be HIPAA. We choose to be HIPAA compliant.
Okay.
We've built our infrastructure to meet or exceed any U.S. or international security regulations. In fact, because maternal health, pregnancy health is such a political topic, it's a complicated for women who are worried about their health data like being out there. So we actually designed a new machine learning ops architecture that is now proprietary to us, that is so secure that we will not have the data to give it to anybody. Nobody would be able to retrieve data from us. And this is very difficult when you're using AI machine learning, right? If you're putting somebody's PII into a machine learning model, that data is very difficult to delete. So I would suspect that there are no companies other than us that are using this stratagem. In fact, it's so secure that we're presenting it to the military to also protect our service members.
Does it basically de-identify everything that comes into the mothership, so to speak, so that way you can't tie it back to any unique user? Or?
It's called federated machine learning with differential privacy. So combining this in a way that, right, so what we do is we push models to device, so mini models that you can think of it kind of like your autocorrect on your phone.
Got it.
That's a mini model that's learning from you. It's staying on the device. So we deploy the mini models. The compute happens with user data on device, and that sends us back models then train our back end.
So you're just getting the model information back. You're not actually getting the underlying data sets.
With differential privacy.
That one goes right over this lawyer's head, but I gotcha.
It's beyond fintech or banking ways that they encrypt. It's beyond any of those standards.
Okay.
Yep. Pretty cool stuff.
Well, interesting on that one, Jonah. I don't know if you have any thoughts on hearing all that. You probably understand that a whole lot better. Well, I know you do a whole lot better than I do.
So the only commentary I have on that is how I really appreciate the long-term vision of it. Like being part of a small startup, like sometimes you just have to make calls that you didn't want to, but you might have to, right? And so while he knows where he wants to be, he's still preparing for it in a way that doesn't make him like recreate the whole project later, especially when they start going from a wellness to an actual healthcare device. And so they're putting little steps along the way that are not only helping keep people's information private and secure, but it's also helping them long term because they won't have to recreate anything. They're doing the compliance now so that when they have to, they don't have to work as hard to figure out how to back channel compliance for like 5 years or 10 years or whatever.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I think that's great.
And the bill from your company will be much less than otherwise. We don't have to have the midnight calls.
To other parts of the globe at midnight. Yeah, from an MVP standpoint, it's what does it take to get to that minimally viable product, and a lot of times people have to throw out compliance things just because there's a limited resources there, right, to be able to get to that step of saying, all right, here's our product. But yeah, no, Dave, I applaud you for that, not throwing that piece out, especially given the long-term vision. Because, for some investors, they may say, well, did you really need it right now since you're a wellness company? But if the vision is that you are going to if you are going to diagnose or treat, at which point in time you're going to have FDA, now your PHI risk goes up, at that point in time, even more than it is now. And with the population you're dealing with, it's kind of like those that are in the mental health space. That data is even more sensitive to someone that's dealing with mental health issues than, my blood work that sits at the LabCorp, they're both, secure. I don't want them out there, but if you get somebody's mental health records versus my, their lab records, it's very, very much different. So I applaud you for that. I mean, again, those are things that I know will pay off, and the right investors, to your point, strategically will see that as a strategic decision around the road of a vision. Whereas some other people who may not appreciate it may just thought, well, why'd you spend that money? Why didn't you just use it for something else?
You're right. It's additional work and documentation, and that equals costs. So it's been I guess fortunately for us, we have a very persistent chief data officer who is dead set on making sure that we build to be ultra compliant.
But I have to say, I still think that it's just important because I always tell people, don't be a small business. Be a small business people are proud to work for, that they're happy to work for, that they want to work for. And so sometimes doing the right thing, getting more sweat equity than you are actually money equity, or putting in the hard hours makes you a better product, makes you a better service, and makes you a better company. And I think that ultimately should eventually be rewarded.
Yeah, I mean, cultures, as well, from this. I mean, I always tell people that the cultures of your business, that when it's small, is the building block for the culture as you get bigger, because it's actually easier to do the culture now. As you get bigger, it'll potentially dilute. You have to try to keep it strong. If it's not a strong culture at the beginning, then you're going to really have problems as you grow. Pouring more money into a no culture business can be, catastrophic out there. But also the culture you have internally, your customers, or who you partner with will pick up on that. And again, Dave, to what you say there, being a lot in the healthcare industry and dealing with those that are in the industry appreciate that, the fact that the what you're putting together, even behind the scenes, on how that plays into your customers and to those that you partner with. So,
on that, I'd say I'm really proud of my team. We've sat down, we've talked about what kind of culture do we want? What are our values? So we've defined what our values are. Radically inclusive is one of them, right? And we came up with one rule for our team. We only have one rule at Bobi: no assholes. And it's worked, man. Yep.
Hey, I've had the no asshole rule my entire life. I'm not going to work with them, and I'm not going to be one, and I'm not going to, hire them. So
Man,
I
you fit
got it.
at Bobi.
Well, Joan, talk about the culture. I mean, you guys put together, you have your team, but you also will bring in other team members for some of the stuff that you're doing. How do you guys view culture when have your core group and maybe others that you bring in from time to time based upon, what y'all are working on?
So that's kind of the hard part of being a small company, is that everything comes down to cash flow. And because we are a services company, and we have to have highly competent individuals. I don't know if anybody has looked at the salary of cybersecurity individuals recently, but like most of our cash flow goes out to payroll. And so having contractors for when we get too much work for one section, just for like our normal team. So we just have, and that's kind of the cool part of being in Oklahoma City and in San Antonio, is that we've gotten to meet so many wonderful individuals with a ton of different skill sets. So like if we need more people to like physically break into, like, say, a bank and impersonate, like, say, a construction worker, we have construction workers, or we have cybersecurity experts who would look that role. We play a lot into people's biases. So if we need to send somebody in to be, your stereotypical IT person, then we have people who can step in and fill those roles as well. So we have just gotten to be involved in these two communities. And within there's just amazing people, digital forensic experts, physical, internal, external pen testers, code reviews. So when people call us in, and we've even had a couple of situations where like we originally didn't know, and then we had to do like deep dive research to figure out how would we tackle this. Like we have now been engaged several times to check for bugs in an office or a conference room. Like people were worried that they were being listened to. And so when you first get that call, you're like, yeah, I can do that. And then you start doing like 3 weeks of heavy research. Like, what are all the ways we can have, listening devices, Bluetooth? Are they things hooked to the windows, like taking apart furniture? And so that's my very long answer to just being like, you just have to be that no assholes rule. You have to find contractors who have day jobs, but like to be involved in very weird tasks that fit their specialties. And if you're willing to work with the people and discuss, and ethics being the most important part of ethical hackers, I didn't say, I think that we're cool enough to keep on bringing in people who like what we do and continue to work with us. So I don't know. I think that we have a pretty good one. But, I don't think we've ever said no assholes, but I really like that. That may become standard at my company.
There you go. There you go. So for both of y'all, and this is just on top of mine, is the curiosity piece. The curiosity that both of you and those organizations drive to solve the problems on that same level. From an education standpoint, this is top of mind for me. I think I said at one point in time during this, I've got a kiddo that's interested in cyber security, cyber tech, technology, coding, right? Which encompasses both of y'all. For each of you, and let me start with you, Dave, and then I'll move back to you, Joan, especially as the educator. But for Dave, what advice do you give kids in high school? If you can look all the way back to you in high school, because I wasn't that kid back in high school, but for, I'm sure you were, that was into data, technology, it was on top of mind. What should they be doing now as they look to finish up their high school year and go into college?
Yeah, it'd be the same advice I gave my kids. There's lots of programs out there now. Cyber Patriots is a great program for cybersecurity. They do competitions. It's fantastic. My 21-year-old, he did it in high school, and he learned a lot from that.
Okay.
There are computer science classes in high school now. Middle school has them. Back when I was in, so the best class that I didn't want to take that I did take in middle school was typing.
Yep.
And back then we learned on actual typewriters, but we also had the old Commodore 64.
Yep, with the hard drive disk that you had to put in so you could do your basic and play your games. And
But this was a game changer for me later in life, where I'm spending all day typing. I mean, those skills are valuable. And I think my middle schooler now, he's Cooper, who I mentioned. He said that he can take computer science as a foreign language, which is interesting. Yeah, so I'm cool with that. I still want to learn Spanish. We're in San Antonio. But
as a father of my kids who hear me say this all the time, learn Spanish. We live in a place that it has utility. Come on, learn Spanish. I got you. Mm-hmm. Well, Joan, as a former educator, what advice would you give those kids in high school? Just so that way I can be like, see, it's not just your dad saying it. I got two people here. Oops, two people here. Oh, my hands are. I'm not. Could be a weatherman on this. Two people here that are doing that. Joan, what's your advice?
Is that not every career is for everybody. And I say that meaning when I was growing up, I would have killed for the opportunities that are at career techs right now, right? Even like intro to cybersecurity or computers, but like the one at the school where I used to teach at a public education high school, but we were paired with a career tech, and they had like pre-engineering, they had pre-medical. If you got into that, there was a strong chance you were probably getting a full ride, like because of how intense and cool and hands-on they were.
Right.
Now, to bring it back to that, not every career is for every person. We mentioned how, I even said, I think on a private conversation earlier with you guys, that it's like drinking from a fire hose of education. Like there's just information, there is jargon, there are things you have to do, hands-on practices. If you don't want an intense life where you are having to learn and read and do and go to conferences, pen testing is not for you. And I don't want to be that way, because it's not exclusive. I'm not gatekeeping. I just want good people who value the cutting edge, the bleeding edge, who have to understand that like it's one of those things where we spend a lot of time learning. A lot. When people are like, oh, I don't have any time. And I'm like, I'm like working on another certification, even though I don't need it. I thought it was better for me to have more information than less information. We are constantly in our lounge chat between our company finding vulnerabilities that are posted and ransomware things that are going through. And we're just updating each other with stuff that we find. And I mean, like, this is chronic. Now, there's also sometimes a little bit of a higher burnout with pen testers, I was going to say, but be aware that like not every career is perfect. Like my mom was a nurse. Nurses are a godsend. I will never be a nurse. That is not my career. And so with that, just be aware that if cybersecurity is something you're truly passionate about, then be passionate about it. Go to conferences, network with people, learn, pick up books. My CTO is already what I consider close to like application development genius, and he picked up a new language to build an application. Like, just learn.
Right. No, I think, the getting experience at as young of an age as possible helps, because if you're either passionate about it or you're not. And, like law, there's a lot of people that go to become lawyers because of I get to be a lawyer and they make a lot of money. The reality is not everybody gets through law school. Not everybody passes the bar, and then not everybody makes a lot of money as a lawyer. It is what it is, right? Or likes it. I have my days. I have a lot of days. I have my days where I do not, right? And that's in any job. But if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to go through the challenges to get there. And I'm going to rewind it all the way back to my final question, which is, if you're not passionate about being a founder and what you're creating, it's very, very, very hard to overcome. And with that, Dave, what's been the biggest challenge as a founder that you just were surprised about? What is it that it was, and how did you overcome it? Let's leave everybody with those.
Biggest founder challenge as a founder?
Yeah.
I mean, as a first time founder,
Yep.
I've worked in a startup before, but not as a founder. So navigating, uh, all learning at, how to incorporate, how to protect your intellectual property, how to all these things. Um, Shameless plug for Geekdom. If you're thinking about starting a business, Geekdom Bootcamp is a great place to start. Just walk in the door. I guarantee they will be happy to show you around and help you out. There's so many resources out there. I started with a SCORE mentor. The SCORE mentors are a lot of them retired CEOs or business owners, or maybe current business owners, CEOs, that volunteer their time to help people that want to break into that or start a business. Um, by using those resources, I was able to, I think, make less mistakes. I still made some, uh, so some more expensive than others, but um, you know, go to Geekdom, go see Matt talk at one of his lessons at Geekdom or one of the panels. I've learned so much by doing that. So that's kind of the challenge of learning, but there's a solution, like,
Yeah. I
go to
mean,
Geekdom or your local.
as a founder, you've got to know law, business, finance, HR.
All the
I always say
hats.
janitorial, and health and safety, all of
Counseling,
those, counseling, and
mental
all of
health.
those. And yeah, that's been, a very common theme is just the amount of, of parts of a business you have to know and learn all of them and grow that knowledge.
Yeah.
Joan, what about for y'all? I mean, coming out of education, which is, institutional. So it's very structured and there's a lot of, pros and cons for that, into, the world of owning, operating, founding, critical fault. What have you learned?
So I do have to say that he basically stole my answer, but I have the other side of that
It's a
coin
pretty
for it.
common answer. So
Okay.
I'm
But
not surprised.
but
Great
the
lens.
other side of that coin is be a giver of
Mm.
the mentorship. Be a giver of that counselor. With I've been in San Antonio only since like September, really, and I've already been on a panel at the HEB Teen Tech Center. This is one of those things where all of that happened because someone's like, "Hey, you said that you like teaching and you're in tech. You want to go hang out with some high school kids?" And I was like, "Yes, that's what I did." And so, anytime I get a chance, someone sits down with you at Geekdom or sits down with you, or you grab a coffee with someone and they're just like, "Hey, I just unofficially, I need some advice." I'm like, "Okay, let me tell you all the horrible mistakes I've made. And hopefully you don't have to repeat them, because if somebody could have stopped me from making some of them, I would have appreciated that." And so, get help, ask for help, give help. I think that that's just the best way to be an entrepreneur in this world.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. I will say, we've talked a little bit about the challenges of fundraising in San Antonio. And I think this is almost episode 50 for us. And if you go back and watch all of them, it's a common theme. We can't be shy about it. It's just the truth. But there's one thing in this community that we have that is very, very rare. And I think it's frustrating because we don't have it, but this is the most valuable thing. And that is, we have a giving community that supports one another.
Yep.
I mean, from the education resources, the time that people devote, from the city to business leaders to programs like Geekdom that are leading the charge, to Velocity, Texas. We really do have this infrastructure here that is in helping and getting people to grow their ideas and move on. That is just powerful. We got to add in the other layer, which is the money. So all you people with checkbooks, let's go. Come on, get into what's in the know, learn about these companies, let's supporting them. But that will come. And that's where this community, I believe, in the next 10 years or so, I mean, it's going to explode, because we're not in Austin, that is a little bit more, it's a lot more cutthroat up there. It's become like Silicon Valley, for them. Here, it's a very collaborative community. That's the identity of this community, which has been super strong.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, Joan, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you guys coming on and talking through. This has been fantastic. My son's
Okay,
going to
great
kill me
conversation.
because I'm going to be like, all right, you got to watch the whole episode now here because I had to, mastermind one self-advocate, self-nerd. Dave, you can call yourself a nerd or not. I don't care. It's up to you. I'm an aspiring nerd this blew my mind. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. This is great.
All right. So for those of you that are listening to us or watching us on our platforms here, see what we do here, which is we're trying to make sure you get to understand all the amazing things that are happening in our community. It's a privilege and an honor to talk with Bobi, to talk with Critical Fault, so that way you can understand about these amazing things happening in our own backyard. And we want to make sure that this is something that we can help grow and support. And that's our mission here at the South Texas Business Lawyers. We are on a mission to educate, support, and advise every founder and small business here in our great state of Texas, specifically in South Texas. And this, like our podcast here, are resources where we can feature and promote these small businesses and startups that are changing our community. We hope you've enjoyed this. Subscribe here, click like, send us